Welcome to the Rebuilt Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Sykes. Each week, I sit down with people who have faced life's toughest challenges and come out victorious, along with mental health experts, coaches, and leaders. We explore powerful stories of transformation, faith, and practical strategies for building a life of purpose and resilience. This is the Rebuilt Podcast. What's up, everybody? My name is Jason. Welcome to the Rebuilt Podcast. On today's episode, I got to sit down with a good friend of mine, Shane New. And I've known Shane for a few years now. We actually met at church. And he works for the church that we attend. He is now the youth pastor, used to be the worship leader. And it's an incredible story how he got connected with the church and his story just within Christianity of how he came to know Christ, the obstacles that he had to overcome as a youth, and just how he pours into other youths now and shares his story. This is just an amazing conversation. I'm really excited for you to listen to it. I think it's going to bless a lot of people. So let's go ahead and jump in. Hey, Shane, it's good to see you, buddy. Thanks so much for being on the show today. How have you been?
Been great, man. Thanks for having me. Excited about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, it's been a while since we've talked. So Shane New is a guy of many talents that I met at a church that I used to go to. We still go to the same church, but he goes to a different, I guess it's a different campus of the church. Yeah. And Shane, he does many things for the church. But before we get into that, I'm just going to give you an opportunity to kind of tell people who don't know you who you are.
Yeah, well, my name's Shane. Like Jason said, I'm right now. My current role at Church on the Move is currently I'm the youth pastor. It's been an amazing time for the last 4 years. I spent close to 15 years in worship leading, and so about 4 years ago, I was asked to take over our student ministry, which has been incredible. Started out with about 60 kids, and now we're running 250 to 300 on a weekly basis, which is pretty awesome.
Awesome.
Man, God's doing a lot of work there, but I also handle stuff like, guest experiences at our church. So I'm over kind of all the hospitality and the welcoming committee, the greeters at the door and the lobbies and auditorium hosts and stuff like that, but also kind of oversee and guide our young adults program as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And man, it slipped my mind that you were the worship pastor. Of course you were. That's
That's
how we met. Yeah. I was a guitarist and kind of auditioned for that. And that wasn't the path for me. So, but man, got us connected and, it's great church. I love the things you're doing out there. But man, let's go back for a minute, because I remember a few years back, we at the church, we have those things called the Brotherhood Breakfast, where all the men come together on a Saturday morning, eat some bacon, and just get inspired by a speaker. And you were the speaker that month.
Yeah.
And man, some stuff that you touched on really hit me hard. And I know that it can hit a lot of the listeners. So if you don't mind sharing, just take us back to kind of what you told me there and just share a little bit of your past and, what got you to where you are.
Yeah. Man, so at that, I remember talking at that Brotherhood breakfast. I talked about the prodigal son and just the story of, his journey and the grace of the Father. And, I was raised in a pretty rough home growing up. It was, 1900s, pretty old now. But my dad at the time was, when I was born, I was the third of three siblings. And my dad was very, very heavily involved in the drug trade. I mean, a large part of a lot of the drug traffic that went on in Dallas at the time. A lot of different stuff too, but also was very, I guess I would call him a con man. He was always scheming and making different money, doing different things. And one of the things he did was, he sold gym memberships to a gym that didn't exist for a long time, got monthly memberships, and he was making money that
Wow.
way. crazy stuff. But also, just a very abusive dad. He was very abusive to my mother, especially my sister. My brother and I probably didn't get the worst of that. My mom and my sister definitely, they were married for 18 years, and she put up with 18 years worth of abuse. And so that's kind of how my life started. Around the time I was about 8 years old, my dad actually, got saved, which was kind of cool. His story was he was, we were living with somebody because we didn't have a home and we'd lost everything that we had, and kind of had a moment with God and straightened up his life. And he was trying really hard. And I would say, at that time, it's that brand new believer coming into, thinking, the first thing he was going to do was quit everything and start going to church, which he did, which was really good for us. But we moved into another town and kind of started going to church. And a lot of times, the home life was still the same. He still battled with some anger. He still battled with some of the abuse was still going on. It was fewer and farther between, but it was still present. And so it was always just kind of a life of fear for a little while. Got involved in church. And then, without sharing too much detail, my mom was really in a bad place, in the marriage, being married that long, and started to seek out counseling from a pastor that was at the church. Uh, they ended up beginning a relationship. So it was kind of a thing where our family kind of fell apart during that time. So that divorce led to a lot of different things in our life. It was a tough few years for sure. A lot of church hurt. If I'm just being honest, there was a lot of church hurt when all the allegations and stuff came out. Of course, nobody believed what was going on, and so we were pretty much shunned and asked not to come to church anymore because people felt like we were starting rumors. So there was a lot of like, I remember walking into churches at 10 years old in our community, and we would go for a couple of weeks, and then somebody would meet us at the door and say, "Hey guys, we have to protect our flock. There's some rumors going out about you guys. You won't be able to go here." And so my dad, brother, and I, we ended up having to drive 45 minutes to an hour to go to church.
Wow.
At that age, how do you understand that at
Yeah.
that
How old
age?
were you at that age?
I was about 10 years old, 9, 10 years old,
So,
still in kids church.
so
So,
trying to, understand
yeah.
where they're coming from on that, and you're trying to figure this whole church thing out. Do you remember how you felt about that, being turned away from church? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so it was. I do actually. At the time, like now at my age, I would probably be mad. At that time, I just kind of accepted that that's the way that it was, and I thought the church could do no wrong. And so I honestly, I felt like it was our fault. Like we had to go hide somewhere and go to church where nobody knew us, and it almost felt like we needed new names and everything. If I'm just being, completely honest. But we ended up going to Dallas, which is a larger area, driving to Dallas to go to churches, and Rockwall, just 45 minutes to an hour away. But even Jason, even then, like there was, I don't know, I grew up in a denominational church. And so there was a lot of that. One, if you were divorced, you couldn't serve, you couldn't do anything in the churches. If you've gone through those types of things, there was just a lot of religion around it. And after, growing up in that, it developed a bitter taste in my mouth. But we would go to churches, 45 minutes away, and somebody from one of the local churches would call and tell them our story to make sure they knew what kind of people were coming to, the church. And so it was almost where, for a period of time, people were using the testimony of things that have happened against us, and it almost felt like we didn't fit in anywhere. And so, as a kid at that age, and as I, between 10 and 12 to 13, I was acting out quite a bit. It was like I
Yeah.
didn't take anything seriously. I would get into as much trouble as I could. Like, if this is the way it's going to be, then I'll just accept my identity, and just, okay, I'm a troublemaker. I'll be a troublemaker,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
You accepted some lies, man.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say, there was about 3 years, about the time of 12 to about 15, my dad man, he was doing great. He was trying really hard. It seemed, that he was very loving, very compassionate, uh, trying to get us to be involved and stuff. And one of the things I remember the most about that time, and I might have shared this at Brotherhood Breakfast, but when I was 13 years old, we had found a new church. It was a big church, and they were going on a church camp to Colorado, and we didn't have the money to go, but they were awesome, man. They let us do fundraisers, we had car washes, and all this other stuff. But man, I was just a poor kid from a little small community, and I didn't really fit in with that type of class of people. I don't know if you know anything about Rockwall, Texas, but it's some pretty, money. There's a lot of money there. And I came from a
Oh,
little bitty town. We didn't have much. And
gotcha.
so I remember going to this camp, and at the time, it was probably, looking back on it, it was probably the best time of my life. But at the time, I felt alone. It was like, man, I didn't fit in with anybody. I did go with two of my cousins, and both of them were real pretty, blonde-headed girls who blue eyes. They jumped in, and man, the students and everybody just loved them. And so we got on the bus, and boom, they were gone. So I spent like 6 days at a church camp by myself, which at the time, at 13 years old, you're thinking, man, what in the world? But man, I got so much from God on that trip. A lot of healing for stuff that I was going through, a lot of assurance, and at a point, I remember. Making they did a call for just if you feel called to be in ministry, if you feel God and the Holy Spirit working on you, whatever it was. And I remember surrendering to a call at 13 years old to ministry. And I thought that could be missions or whatever, but I knew in my heart that God was calling me to do something. I didn't know what or why or whatever, but I remember going, I'm willing, and I want to be serious about this. And so I changed, like, for those like from 13 to 15 years old, man, I was dedicated. I was going to church. I was bringing friends to church. My granddad ended up starting a little church in the community that we, lived in, and we were welcome at that church because it was my granddad's church.
Yeah.
But man, I was bringing my friends to church. We had a little bus ministry that we went around and picked up other students, and started building and doing things right. And man, it was awesome. When I got home, I remember my granddad, after he started that church, he pulled me into the back room, anointed me, for ministry. And literally 2 weeks after he anointed me, I was preaching at 13. I
Wow.
remember my first message, I was in the denominational church. My first message was called Highway to Hell. And it was exactly what you would think it would be. It was,
Yeah.
yeah. It was literally, fire and brimstone, man. It
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Yep.
Funny thing, my sister actually still has the videotape of it, and I still haven't watched it because I just don't want to see
Oh
it.
my gosh. Oh, you're gonna have
But
to watch that.
maybe. But
Well, I can
but
I
yeah,
can relate to what you're saying. I was raised Southern Baptist,
yeah,
so
okay,
it was a different time for sure. But man, one thing that really stuck out to me is, growing up before your father's salvation, seeing the abuse, seeing
yeah,
all of the hardship that your mother went through and the abuse on yourself as well.
yeah.
It sounds like you didn't really harbor um, ill will towards him or bad intentions because of that, or is that something that you had to kind of to battle good and evil, as you're growing up?
Well, during that time, he was my dad, and that's all I knew. So like, I never know at that time, man. I loved my dad. He was my dad. And a lot of times, I think that that's what happens in people's life is that they see past all of that stuff, and man, it's my dad. He took me places. He did things with me. He taught me things. There was a lot of things behind the scenes that I didn't know. Like, for instance, why I was with my dad after the divorce. He came and picked my brother and I up from school one day, and we just got in the car with him and went. And he said, "Hey, you're going to stay with me now." And we're like, "Oh, okay, we're staying with dad. As our dad." We didn't know until later in our life that he had threatened my mom's life if she pursued any type of custody with us at all. Like, if like he literally came up and you know her words that he kidnapped us from school and said they're mine and you'll never see him again, type of thing. But to us it was, hey, your mom doesn't want you to live with her. She's got this new relationship and she doesn't want you guys. And so, to be honest with you, we were really upset with my mom uh
Yeah.
for a long time.
And a
um
lot, a lot of specifically men and women,
uh,
but I feel like, I'm talking more to the men because that's my situation. I went through that in my divorce is when parents don't agree on a divorce or there's really bad feelings involved, you got to be careful what you tell your kids and how you act because you can turn them. Some people turn them intentionally, and I'm sure there are people listening that have had their kids turned away from them because of their ex spouse. But even if you don't, not even trying to do that, you can turn your kids away from their father or mother just by ranting. You know, and it's you got to be so careful about what you say.
You do. You do. I mean, especially kids, their minds are so easily formed and they're being formed at a rapid pace at that age. And so, yeah, it was tough, man. It was about 7 years, I think, total that I didn't have any relationship with my mom whatsoever. Like,
And she wanted one,
she wanted one, but she was afraid for her life, man.
right?
I remember playing football, playing sports and stuff like that, and she wouldn't come to the games. And my dad would tell us that she doesn't care enough to come to our football games. Later on in life, when I did have a relationship with my mom, she's like, I wanted to come, but he threatened me that if I showed up, he was gonna hurt me or my husband, and didn't know what to do. And she's apologized and all of those things for not being stronger. But man, as an adult, I look back and I think 18. So my mom was born in a house that was abusive too. I mean, she had five brothers who all physically and sexually abused her. She met my dad when she was 17 years old. She walked into it. He owned a Dairy Queen, and she walked into the Dairy Queen and just very insecure, and applied for a job, and he hired her. Uh, and then took her out to bar, got her drunk. They ended up driving to Vegas and got married. That's how quick it was. But she had come from such an abusive background that she stepped into a relationship that was as bad or maybe even worse than what she grew up around, because that's all she knew. She
Oh,
was formed that way. She
right.
kind of stepped into her identity that way. So,
Yeah.
you
I was
know,
about to say it goes back to your identity of what the
yeah,
world gives you. If you can take that, you can run with it and you can
yeah,
choose to believe it. But a lot of people don't understand that there's another option. You don't have to
yeah,
because, God's got a completely different life plan for you if you want to choose that. And so when you take this world given identity of who someone says you are or you're as good as your circumstances, you take that, those are the options that you think you have.
yeah,
So, it's not surprising when you continue on that path.
yeah, yeah. And you can't really blame anybody for it. It's
Right.
literally all that she knew. And so her, I'll say through that, like, even just looking back now, thinking about it, like when my dad did accept Christ and all that happened, I'm definitely not saying that it was God's will that, a church divide, marriages split up and all that other stuff. But looking back at it now, I can see that even in the tragic mess, I mean, my mom wouldn't have a relationship with Jesus at all. And she's a devout Christian lady. I mean, they awesome, incredible people. But she would have never had that stuff not happened. So it's like, yeah, we can sit around and
He
look at all the
turns
bad stuff that happened,
he
but
turns all
God has a history.
things
Yeah,
he turns all things good for those who love him and according to his purpose.
that's it. So it works out. So yeah. So
So your
yeah.
father, when he became a Christian,
Mhm.
did the behavior start to change with your mom, or was that still kind of a
No,
territory
that
for
was a lot. That was a lot of pride. He felt very. Well, he felt cheated on. I mean, it literally, that part of his pride was damaged, and I don't know that he ever got over that. So you have to understand my dad's a narcissist as well. And so he was definitely, he couldn't look back and see all the pain that he had caused her or anybody else. He just does, well, he accepted Jesus. Now you should accept me. And all of the things I did is done. And so, and at that point, now you hurt me. And so he just carried that. And it would be righteous judgment is what he would call it.
Mhm.
We're not, no, we got to stay away from her. She's an adulterer or whatever it is. And it was like, to him, nothing that had happened in the 18 years that they were married mattered anymore. And that's, I think a lot of times that's what happens with narcissistic people and victims. Uh, and the narcissist expects them just to forgive and forget and move on, and I'm doing the right things now, and you're supposed to be better now because I'm better now. And it's not the reality of things. It's not the way that mental health works. There's a lot of damage that
Right.
was done. you know
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
so
that creates it can create, especially for the victim, they can live in a
yeah,
victim mentality for
yeah,
years after that, right?
yeah.
And it rewires their neural pathways to where they're literally thinking differently, that I'm always a victim. I'm always going to be abused no matter what I do. And yeah, not good stuff.
It's not.
But
I mean, up until the day that he passed away. So my dad was in prison up until 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago, and further into the story, like I didn't have a relationship with my dad after I was about 22 years old. Uh, but he passed away in prison. They actually let him out for some reason. I'm not real sure why they let him out, but they let him out. But up until that point, my mom's 70. How old is she now? She's 72 years old this year, and she still lived in fear. And her and my stepdad have been married for over 35, 36 years or whatever, and she still was in fear of when he was going to be out. Where is he at? Even to the point where she showed up at the funeral just to make sure that he was actually in the coffin. It was like, okay, that chapter of her life lasted from the time she was 17 years old until she's 72 years old, you know?
wow,
So,
wow.
yeah,
And so you said he went back to prison. So did he?
several times.
Was
Yeah.
was the and don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. We
Yeah.
can be saved. Just because we're saved does not mean we're perfect, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
God doesn't expect us to be perfect at all.
Yeah.
But through his walk with Christ, did it fluctuate up and down? Did he relapse? What happened?
Yeah. So at 13 years old, we were doing really well. To be honest with you, some of the things were sneaking up in my life, my brother's life. We grew up, knowing what drug use was. My dad always shared his testimony in a glorification kind of way. Like he would share his testimony and talk about all the amazing things he did when he was doing drugs. And man, I used to sell. I had a trunk load, full of cocaine and the pure PCP that we used to sell back in the day, and I would bring it in from Mexico. He would just glorify his testimony a lot. And as kids growing up hearing that, there was a little interest for us. And, at 15 years old, um, I took a turn, and my dad was still doing really well. He was trying very hard to, keep us steered in the right direction. I started smoking first, it was whatever. And he, would find out I was smoking, and he would, I'm going to take you outside and whoop you until you don't, smoke anymore. And by that time, I'm a big dude. You can see I'm not small, and I was bigger than him. I was like, let's go. Come on. I'm going to do what I want to do. Which it just kind of turned into, my buddies, my brother, and we'd all get together and drink. And then I remember one night specific, it was the New Year's of 1995 is when it was, because we were planning on having a party. My dad had finally said, listen, I don't want you guys out. I don't want you guys going anywhere. If you're going to do anything, just do it here at the house. I'd rather you be here and drink or whatever and be safe. And I went over to a buddy of mine's house, and I was going to get a bag of weed. My brother and I wanted to, smoke some weed with our friends and stuff, which we had done occasionally at that point. And I got over, and the guy, my friend, didn't have any pot, but he's like, "Man, I've got crank," is what he said. And I was like, "I Yeah, man, I'm all about that." I didn't at that I've never heard it called that, so I just called my brother, and I was like, "Hey, man, he doesn't have any pot, but he's got some crank." And my brother's like, "Heck yeah, get some." And so we got it. We ended up having that night at our house. We had probably 60 people there. There were fights, there was drugs, there were guns, there was all kinds of stuff. And my dad, at that point, just finally threw his hands up in the air and was like, well, none of it worked. I guess I'm just going to join them, And so he ended up, I carry a lot of guilt about that, but he kind of ended up joining in with us, which started a long 2 years of, everything that he was doing before we got back into my house turned into the hub for, we had methamphetamines, I sold LSD, we had a girl that lived with us that sold pot, we had a guy that lived with us that sold cocaine. So our house became the drug central hub of the community that we're in. And my dad was very heavily involved, and we were doing, intravenous use. I remember at 15, about 15 and a half, about 6 months after I started, I remember, just the effect of the way that I was doing the drugs before, snorting it, eating it, smoking it, wasn't working anymore. And so my dad said, "You're doing it wrong. Let me show you how to do it." And he drew up a syringe for the first time and stuck it into my arm at about 15 and a half years old. And so
Man.
that turned into a daily use. We were literally up for 12 to 14 days at a time, uh, selling thousands and thousands and thousands. My dad knew how to do the drug business. He knew how to do it. And so we had everything that we needed in that house. It was just horrible, horrible situation. My brother ended up marrying one of our original drug dealer's daughters, lived across the street. So we had the whole street was just, you come down that street, you get anything that you want right here. And when we were selling to the justice of the peace of the community, the constable was one of our clients. We pretty much had the police under our thumb for a long time, and that type of thing. I went through and just destroyed the lives of a lot of my friends and the people that I invited to church. There was a period of that time where I would go to church to meet people to bring them into the drugs that I was doing. It was a horrible, horrible time in my life. But yeah, that's kind of where he fell back off into probably, well, definitely the thing that brought him back into probably worse than he was before. To be honest with you, so
Well, man, thanks for sharing that. That's
yeah,
tough, you know.
it was a hard
But
time.
it didn't end there
It
because you're
didn't end
talking
there.
to me here.
It didn't end there. Yeah, praise God, it
So,
didn't end there. And
right, and that's go ahead.
yeah. Well, I just, it took me a long time to look back and realize, but a lot of the things that, happened during that time that were very, very bad, I look back and I look at all the grace that was involved there and how God's using a lot of that in my life right now. And I'm like, you know, definitely don't want to sit here and say, thank you that I got to, but it's those things that are a huge part of who I am now that I'm thankful
Mhm.
for,
Absolutely. Yeah.
thankful for the
Everybody's
overcoming
got
part.
yes, yeah, because that makes you stronger. I mean, a lot of times it's not the end place where you're supposed to be. It's the process, the
Yeah.
journey of getting there. That's what defines you. And and it adds to your story because I don't think anybody just sits there and says, "Man, I'm so happy I went through all this junk,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But and a lot of people they don't realize that when they're going through it.
Yeah.
I'm actually talking to a guy right now who is going through something really, really hard. And he asks me all the time, he says, "Is this worth it? Like, I could just live this differently and be more comfortable." And I'm just like, "Yeah, you could,
Yeah.
but don't think about yourself right now. Think about yourself in 2 to 3 years. When you look back on this time, are you gonna be proud of that moment? Where are you gonna be in 2 to 3 years? Because all life is a bunch of small decisions, and
Yeah.
one decision leads to a next. So if you make this choice, what's your next choice, right? The man that you want to be in 3 years, that perfect person in your thoughts that he is who I want to be. In that version of him, what is he doing? What would he do? Right?
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
hard. It's really hard in
It
the
is.
moment to look at that.
Sure.
But but
Absolutely.
it did work out for you. And so
It
let's
did.
continue the story. I want to see the good
Yeah.
parts.
So, yeah. So just to wrap up that part, I mean, it was, I'll just get what I shared with you at brotherhood was, the transition part. Most likely I'd found myself, I love that story, the prodigal son, because he went out and did his own thing and he found himself in the lowest pit of life. And I did. I was, our house was raided. There were a lot of different things. Our house was raided. We were thrown into jail. Um, Lost everything that we had. I found myself completely broke. almost overdosed on cocaine at one point, and I was like, okay, I had this moment of reckoning where I'm going to die or I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And I was with the arrest, I was 17, almost 18 years old, and was facing 15 years in prison. And by the grace of God, I went to court and I faced the thing, and they gave me a deferred sentence, put me on probation, said, hey, you keep your nose clean, you do things right for 3 years, then we will defer this and won't be on your record at all. But if you mess up, you're looking at this. So a little bit of fear, like, okay, this is where I'm going to end up.
Pressure on.
It did. And I'd love to say that, man, God spoke to me in a dream, or man, I went to church and I repented, and that wasn't my story. But it was definitely looking at, the reminder of this is what's going to happen to you if you continue down this road. And I chose to choose a different ending, at that point. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, so I went through my probation. I did really well. Started working. I did get married at a very young age. I married a girl that was, at the time when we got busted and we got raided and everything, we'd been together for about 6 months. We knew each other since we were 12, but we'd been dating and actually living together for about 6 months, and she was part of it too. So we got arrested. She got sent somewhere else. I got sent somewhere else. Decided to clean up, and basically made the stupid 18-year-old decision to say, hey, our parents, your parents don't want you to be with me because I'm a bad influence on you. But what if we just got pregnant? And then they'd have to, that's the kind of decision making I was making at the time. Blessing in disguise, but we ended up having two kids. We were married for about 4 years. Neither of us were ready to be married. Neither of us knew how to be married. At the time, she was really trying to lean in and have a relationship with God. I was still bitter. I'm at the age now to where all of that stuff was sneaking up on me. All of the church hurt, all the things were sneaking up on me, and was very bitter toward church. And so she wanted to go to church. I didn't want to go to church. She wanted the kids in church, and I could care less about church at the time. And so there was just a lot of tension in the marriage, and it didn't work out. Uh, the grace side of that is when we did decide to get divorced, because both of us had come from broken homes, both of us had been, played against mom, played against dad. It was all of this stuff. We made a commitment to each other that, hey, just because our marriage didn't work out, we are not going to raise our kids like that. We're not going to do that. And so we, through ups and downs, we made several boundaries in our life. One of them was that, the kids were never going to meet somebody that we were with until we had met the other person and we knew that this was a right relationship that was going to last. So April, my wife, you've met April. We've been married. We've been together 23 years now, but uh, it was, I think, 6 or 8 months before she ever even met my kids. It was like, okay, kids are going to be here. You can't be around while the kids are here. So we just put
Yeah.
boundaries in our life and did that.
Yeah.
Uh, so it worked out. So we've got a really good relationship. Both of those kids are grown. One of them's a state trooper. My son's a state trooper in Oklahoma, and my daughter is she got a master's degree in uh, family Christian counseling and psychology. Uh, but it still wasn't. I was real reluctant to even go back to church. I never had an issue with God throughout all of this. It wasn't ever God that I was mad at. And that calling at 13, that was still in there for me, but I thought that I had squandered it. I thought that I had wasted it, and so I was hesitant to get back into church. But when my older kids were they were probably about 7 years old at this time, I started thinking, okay, God, I want my kids to have a relationship with you. I don't want my experiences, the way that I felt about church and all that stuff, to have an effect on them knowing you. Because again, I was never mad at God. I was more mad at myself and the church.
Uh-huh.
And so we started church hopping, kind of going around, where can we find a church to go to? And because of my negative attitude toward the church, Jason, dude, I ripped every church apart. Like every single thing about the church was bad. These people are fake. Okay, it's just a matter of time before they ask us to leave. If they find out about my record or in my testimony, I can't be honest with them. And it was just the enemy. I was just like really doing his best to keep us from church. But to fast forward to actually realizing, the gravity of my negativity and the way that I felt about the church. My brother had met a woman I was 27, so this would have been back in like 2007. But my brother he was living in Texas. I was living in Oklahoma, and he had met a woman and at a bar, and he married her. And within 3 months, she had left him and took everything from him. He had kids she took all their games and clothes and all that stuff. And he got home to an empty house one day. And I was in church. I decided, okay, I'm just going to get into church. I want my kids to be there. So we started going to church on the move. They loved the kids ministry. So I was like, great, they're having a blast. And I was just going and complaining about everything about the church. And my brother calls me. I was hunting. I was out sitting in a deer blind, and my brother calls me one day, and he tells me what happens. And he says, "Man, I have nothing. I've got my motorcycle. She even took our car. Like I have no way to take my kids to school anymore." And I said, "Man, do this." I said, "Why don't you get in a U-Haul, put your motorcycle on the back of the U-Haul, whatever else you got, bring your boys, come up here and move to Oklahoma. You can live with me." And so he did. And that was like it was a Saturday when he got there. And when he got there, literally walks through the door. We get him and, "Man, I'm sorry you're going through this. So, by the way, tomorrow we go to church. It's a big church. The music's pretty cool. The pastor's going to come out and preach, and it's going to be good, but then he's going to pray as he's walking back out of the door, can't talk to me." And I'm just sitting there ripping the church apart. And I'm talking negatively about everything that happens, but the kids are going to love it. And then we got up on Sunday morning. He's like, "Man, I'd love to go." So we got up on Sunday morning. My wife took our kids and his kids all in our SUV, and my brother and I rode in my pickup truck, and we're all the way to the church, man. We lived out in Chelsea, Oklahoma, so it was like a 40-minute drive all the way to the church. I'm just ripping it apart, telling him all the things that he's going to hate about it. And our pastor, Willie George, we're sitting there, and just so happens that the message for the day was murmuring about the church, murmuring about the things of God.
Oh, he got you.
He got me, and you know him, so you know that, like, I felt like he was looking at me, and he literally said at
Mhm.
one point, he said, "Here's the sad thing. Some of you are here today, and maybe you've got a friend or somebody, or maybe a family member that you love with all your heart. And maybe they're going through the roughest time in their life. And I don't know, maybe they've gone through a divorce. Maybe they've, moved to a new state. Maybe they don't have a job. Maybe they're just trying to figure out what's going on in life and how do I make it through this. And all you can do is tear apart and talk negatively about the very vehicle that God might use to bring them back into his presence." And I looked over at my brother, and he looked at me, and he said, "Was he in our truck? Did they wire our vehicles here?" And it convicted me, man. It convicted me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and it was one of those stories where I literally repented in that moment for that. It wasn't anything else that I repented about. It was like, "God, I have done everything in my power to destroy your church. And I am wrong here, and I surrender that to you. I surrender my previous feelings about the church. God, would you show me the church in a new way?" And I remember praying that prayer, and it kicked off. Like, once I was able to drop down that it if anybody has grown up in an abusive home life, and with some of the testimony, you keep everybody in your life kind of at arm's reach, because it's like, I'll be close enough to you, but you're never going to get close enough to me to hurt me again. And I was doing that with the church. I was doing that with God. I didn't trust anybody's. But when I surrendered that, man, my life changed. And I said, "I'm not going to go just for my kids anymore. I need God to heal some things in my life." And man, he took me on a journey, man. He took me on a journey for a couple of years of just sitting and learning and getting into the Word of God, and seeing how, the character of God, I think, is the thing that needed to be healed in me the most. Just understanding how God was. And
Mhm.
once I did, and part of that prodigal son story was, what I love about that story is, after all that guy, the prodigal son, did, he comes back, and if you know the story, like, when he's still far off, like, the father runs out to meet him in his mess, which to me is like, man, he had to walk back with him. He kissed him on his dirty neck. Like, he had to walk back with him. And what I never realized until a point in my life is that the father in the story never says a word to the son, because the son rehearses this apology, which is what I was doing. I was apology, apology, apology. God, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But in the story, he never says it's okay. He never says I forgive you. He never says anything. He literally turns around and tells everybody, grab a robe, grab a ring, grab shoes, give him the family name, the crest, put the robe back on his feet. We're having a party. It's like he accepted him back and walked him back in there without ever condemning him for anything that he had done.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
felt that,
I love
you
that
know?
story, and I
Yeah.
love your story and how it relates. First off, I love the story about Willie George because I can relate to
Yeah.
that because I know the guy.
Everybody
And
can.
just
Yeah.
that is so because one
Yeah.
thing about him is you're like sitting at a table with your dad, right?
Yeah.
And he's like telling you how it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like some of the stuff sucks to hear, but he's like, I love you, I want what's best for you, and here it is, right? And I
Yeah.
love how your story um incorporated his sense of humor and
Yeah.
his it's almost like it's almost like God speaks directly to him and says, "Get Shane on this one." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's so
Yeah.
funny. But then, and then I also love the part about your story where you're talking about how, the prodigal son returns and he doesn't
Yeah.
ask him anything.
Anything.
He has this whole rehearsed thing. He's like, I don't care about that. And that's
Yeah.
and that's how God is. He doesn't
Right.
care. He just wants our heart. He doesn't
Right.
care how far we've come. He doesn't care what we've done. He just wants your heart. He just wants you to surrender it. And when you surrendered it, it's like, now I can use you. Now
Yeah.
let's go forward. Right?
Yeah.
It's just amazing, man. And it's
It-
such a great reminder of God the Father is a great example of us as fathers on earth.
yeah.
When our kids mess up, and we both have, or I don't know if yours are teenagers anymore, but I
They
have
are.
a
Well,
house
I have
full of.
two grown and two teenagers. Yeah.
Okay, well, I have a house full of teenagers, and it's
Yeah.
difficult. But when they mess up, you just got to be like, it's okay. I want you to come to me, and then let's go move forward from
Let's
that,
move
right?
forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just God is a just God, but he's also so gracious, man. And it was the first time I think in that moment, and even looking through after I really got into and started studying the word of God, it was the first time in my life I felt genuinely loved, just in spite of who I was before.
Yeah.
And so it was after that, to make to long story short, like there was just this Pastor Ethan at he's the Broken Arrow pastor now, but he
Yeah.
he was doing I don't even think it was like a message, but he was up there one day after this and he was doing maybe an offering message or maybe just a little testimonial, but it was New Year's again, another, like, it's kind of crazy. I've never thought about that. I remember my life falling apart on a New Year's, and I remember it also kind of being resurrected on a New Year's. But
Let's go.
I had been sitting there listening, for a little while and thinking that my calling was done and all of that other stuff. And Pastor Ethan asked this question. He's like, I just want you to think, how, what do you want from God this year? Well, and I'm not talking about, do you want to lose weight? Do you want to eat better? Do you want to be more physical? Like, what do you really want? I remember at that moment saying, I want to know God. I want to know not the God of my father, my grandfather, anybody in my life. I want to know God. And I remember making a decision. April and I together, we got home, and every night we'd sit there and we'd read the word of God together. We'd look at each other like, holy cow, did you know this was in here? Did you know that was in there? Oh my goodness. And we read through the entire Bible, and it opened up and kind of resurrected. Okay, I may not be able to do what I thought I could do at 13, which was just my human mind thinking, but I can do something. And I remember
Yeah.
through a series of things, like I started kind of jumping in with the creative team and trying to get into small groups and stuff like that, which was awesome, really loving it. But Candace, my ex-wife, we were all going to church at the same time, Church on the Move, but we lived so far away. They came to me and said, I think we just want to be in a closer church, closer to home. We feel like we're driving too far. We can't really do all the things. And we're like, oh, we don't want to leave right now. There's this series called I Want a New Marriage. Like, we want to go through that. But after praying, it was like we wanted our kids. Um, by this time we had one more. April and I had another kid, but Dylan and Kaylee, my oldest two, we didn't want them to go to one church on one weekend and go to another church on another weekend, have a group of friends over here and a group of friends over here, and never really have the community of the church that God wanted them to have. So through prayer, we decided to move to another church, all together. And we got there and just kind of met some people there. And man, I just wanted to do something. And I remember just like jumping in and saying, "Hey, can I help stack chairs? Can I do something? I just want to do something." And so I started stacking chairs and helping with setup and stuff like that. And I ended up, because of the community, a guy came up and sat next to me. I joined the softball team, and I don't even like softball, but I joined the softball team. And this guy came over and sat next to me. He's like, "Hey, who are you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm Shane. What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I sell real estate. And I just, I play softball right now. I'm being a little bit of a smart aleck. And he's like, "No, no, no. Like, what do you do? Like, who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I do real estate." I'm not talking about what you do for a living. Like, what do you have in you? And I'm like, this is the weirdest question that anybody's ever asked me. What do you like? And I said, well, I play music. You play music? What do you play? I was like, well, I'll play the keyboard. Okay, cool. I'm going to introduce you to Eric. He was the worship pastor. I'm going to introduce you to a guy I know named Eric. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I haven't played music in a while. I just like music. I do a little singing, a little playing and stuff. He's like, oh, no, 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 no. You're going to meet Eric. Eric reaches out to me one day and I was like, man, I just told that guy, I told him what I just want to stack chairs. And he said, man, you may be the best chair stacker on the face of the planet, but you've got a gift of music and I want to use it. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of just reluctantly jumped into doing some music with the worship team and stuff. And it was kind of funny because I had to meet with the pastor. I said, Eric, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I feel like the pastor needs to know my story before you guys let me do anything here. I'm not worthy to be up there. And he said, man, because you're not worthy to be up there is exactly why I want you to be up there. And so I ended up meeting with the pastor of the church, and I sat and he listened to my testimony, and I'm crying like a 4-year-old, and he said, hey, I don't care about who you were. I care about who you are. And I can see a man who is coming back to Jesus, and you're living the life, and I see who you are now. And so it's like, man, praise God. I said, well, I need to do something. I've been reading the Bible a lot. And one of the things before I made a commitment to actually serve on the team like consistently and say, okay, I'm going to jump in with both feet, I was reading where, Peter asked Jesus, like, how many times should you forgive somebody who has wronged you? Like 7? And Jesus, like, 7 times 70. Like, how in the world could you ever not realize how much you've been forgiven and hold something against somebody? And so through that, I literally had to find my dad. I had to search him. I knew I needed to forgive him and also ask forgiveness from him before I could literally step into my new identity and actually feel good and confident about leading people, leading myself, leading my family. I knew I couldn't harbor unforgiveness. It was revealed to me and just through the Word of God and the Holy Spirit. And so I remember going to Dallas. He wasn't in prison at this time. He'd been in and out of jail, but I didn't let him know I was coming. I didn't call him and say, hey, I want to meet up with you. Uh, I took my family down to my mom's house. They were doing something. April had something to do. And so I took them over there and I said, hey, I'm going to disappear for a little while. I need to go find my dad. And so I went to where I thought he would live. I called my grandmother, found out where he was living. I just knocked on his door and he came. And man, I saw by this time, this broken man, in and out of jail, still on drugs. The house smelled horribly. His hair, my dad was a con man, so he was always real trim, wore pressed jeans and dark shirts. Like everybody that saw him thought that he had everything together, but man, I saw him in the lowest place that I've ever seen anybody. And I said, hey, can we go to lunch? And yes, yes, absolutely. And I remember we went to a Chili's and we were sitting there and he's talking to me like, man, I haven't seen you in years by this point. And I said, Dad, I just want you to know I love you. And I know that man, you had some hard things in your life. And as I've been praying for you, uh, I see a man who is still a son of God, regardless of anything that you've ever done, regardless of, what struggles you had, what addictions you had, what anger issues, whatever. And I just want you to know that I do not hold anything against you for what happened. It was hard. But I want you to know I forgive you and I love you. And I need to ask your forgiveness because I had part in this too. And I told him, I said, I remember, man, God has shown me those 3 years that you were really trying to follow him, and you were the most loving and most compassionate. He's given me memories of things that I'd never even, like, there was stuff like, man, I would have an ear. I had real bad ear problems when I was a kid, and I remember him laying down with me as I'm sobbing, crying, and he's holding me and he's praying, God, take this pain from my son, give it to me instead, let me take his pain from him. And there was just little moments that God started to reveal about that little small time frame in my life, that broke my heart for him more than being angry with him. And we cried together, and he asked me, can I meet your family? Can I meet your kids? And I said, right now, let's just take this day at a time. Let us be okay, and just this is our story right now, and it's not their story. So when God shows us that it's okay, if that day comes, man, I will listen to God. We'll go with that. But right now, let's just focus on some repairing our relationship. And a few weeks later, he ended back up in prison. He was in prison till the day that he died. But so it never happened. But there was this, man, for me to be able to do anything that God had for me, there is no way that I would be doing what I'm doing now. And God using, like, the reason I'm in youth ministry, I think I didn't realize this until I was in ministry for like 15 years. Everybody told me I should be in youth ministry. And when I was asked to do it, I said no. You've heard that story before. Like, my pastor asked me, hey, would you consider going into youth ministry? And I was like, no, but I mean, if you need somebody for a little while, I'll do it and I'll pray about it. And I went home and prayed about it, and God started to show me, man, when you were 13, you had nobody guide you in the right way. When you were 15, you went through some rough times in your life and nobody understood you. You need to be what you didn't have. And so it just, and even like how he used the divorce situation, my divorce situation, the way that we were able to parent the kids, we've been able to, help people that have gone through divorce, give different perspective, and help them be able to co-parent together. Students, my youth ministry is amazing. I'm in the west side of Tulsa, which there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of sexual sin, there's a lot of that stuff around, and I'm looking around like, God, you've positioned me, you used every single piece of my life, and you're using that to minister to others. And when I see others, and I've actually been there, I know what you can do. I've been in this situation. I know what you need to
Yeah.
do right now. If you'll trust me, let me walk with you through this.
Yeah.
Because I had nobody walking with me through those times. And it's just beautiful when you look at that and you say, God, it's like I said earlier, it's weird to say thank you for letting me walk through that. But if I didn't walk through that, if God didn't walk with me through that, there's no way that I feel like I could be effective ministering to the people that he's put in my life. And
Uh,
so it's the graves, it's the gardens out of a graveyard, man. It's the things that God works together and turns for good. Everything the enemy intends for evil, he turns it for good and uses it. And it's almost like laughing in the face of the enemy. It's like, you
yes.
thought you had him. You thought you could take this man. You thought that you could stop him from doing what I've called him to do. But look what I
Uh,
did, even with all the things that
yes.
you did.
It's powerful. It's
And so,
powerful,
man,
bro.
it's just yeah.
Yeah.
I over the top thrilled with God and his grace and his goodness, man.
And
So
thanks for sharing that.
yeah,
That is powerful.
no problem,
Oh,
man.
I love that. Well, man, I miss you guys out there. We need to come
Yeah,
come out and see you guys one of these weekends.
we're still
We
there,
we
man.
I know. We try to get out there, but we're so connected
Well, and you
in
live
in
closer
Tulsa
to the
now.
other campus anyway, right?
13 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And you're talking about reading the Bible, really studying the Bible. I'm going to COTMU,
oh yeah,
and which is in Broken Arrow.
yeah.
And so Blake Zimmerman's been teaching that. And oh my gosh, dude, it's been so
Oh,
amazing. But learning theology and really reading the Bible. And of course, Ruth, she went to Bible college, and I'll come home and I'll be like, honey, did you know that and she's like, yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah. And you're like, why didn't you tell me earlier?
She's like, you wouldn't have believed it. I get her every now and then. I'll be like, did you know this? She's like, well, actually. And I'm like, no, Blake said it wasn't. And she's like, really?
And she's like, wait until week 13. Okay. Yeah. He'll clear that up for you. So I was part of that. I was the first class. There was 17 of us in the first class. We didn't have a notebook. We didn't have the coffee cup. We didn't have the t-shirt. We literally were the guinea pigs. But man, I'll tell you what, that going through COTM and getting understanding theology, was very against it for a long time just because of my religious upbringing. I thought, oh gosh, here we go. But actually understanding some of the context around the Bible even opened up a new layer of God's character for me. It gave me the freedom to release some things that I was holding on to. And then it just gave me this freedom to say, yes, and yeah, but also this. And there's so many layers of it. So, man, getting into that was incredible. And I've gone through 2 years of seminary now, too. So I've got 1 more year left for my master's degree. So just every bit of the information, not just the information, but our church is there's information, but there's practice and there's community, and all of those things have reformed me and reshaped me in my life. Getting some information, yeah, but having a place where I can practice it, and then also a group of people around me to hold me accountable, to walk with me through stuff, to pray with me through stuff, all of those things that God has done since I started following him, has reformed me completely. I'm a different person now than I was 5 years ago. I'm a different person 5 years ago than I was 20 years ago. And I imagine in 5 years, I'll be a different person than I am today. And that's how God just never stops working on you. And sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's beautiful. It's messy. It's disgusting. It's humorous. It's all of these different things. But man, even today, he's still pulling stuff and mining stuff. I love, I've got Pastor Greg, Pastor Greg Scott, says, when you still have a wound is when somebody can touch it and it still hurts, and it's like, okay. And there's things in life, even today, that, somebody or God will just touch on something, or, oh, that still hurts right there. But I know that if he's touching it, that means that he's ready to heal it. And so it's amazing, just the little things that he still heals. And he is the healer, and he always will be a healer. So
that's right, brother. Absolutely.
So awesome.
Well, man, I have really enjoyed this time, man. Thank you so much for being on and for sharing, and just, man, I respect it. I respect you and value it. And thank you.
Thanks for having me, man. Even through this conversation, God's revealed some things that I didn't know. I was like, holy cow, that just now made sense in talking about it. So It's always good. Revelation 12:11 says, we overcome the accuser by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. A healing thing for anybody, listening to this is it helps you to share your testimony, share what God's done, because it's still, he's still working. He's still doing it. Yeah. So the enemy wants us to be silent. He wants us to, bow down in our shame. And man, if I could just get a new start with nobody knowing my past, nobody knowing my story, everything will be fine. And the reality of it is, man, until you are able to communicate it and share it, you're still going to be holding on to the pain from it. So
vulnerability is strength.
Yeah. Shut that devil up, man.
Yeah. I always thought that I was, ineligible of doing anything good because of my past, but it wasn't until I accepted that because of my past, I'm actually capable to help other people. And it's just, there's power in it, in accepting that. So.
Well, you're doing it, man. I'm awesome. Proud of you for doing what you're doing right now. This is what you're doing is a very important ministry. God cares about it. Obviously, restoration, redemption, all of those things. That's the God that he is. That's why he sent Jesus. So you're doing the work of Jesus, man. So keep doing it.
Yeah.
Keep doing it,
brother. All right, man. Well, I will talk to you later. Have a great evening. Appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed today's guest. And I just wanted to say that If this has made you think, if this has sparked something in you, maybe about your purpose or your relationship with God, I just want to encourage you to not let that moment pass. If you're ready to take that next step and connect with me personally, you can reach out to me through my email, which is jason@rebuiltlifecoach.com, or you can go to my website at www.rebuiltlifecoach.com. And if you're serious about building a stronger, faith-driven life, please go check out that program. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep walking in purpose and growing in faith. I'll catch you next time.